Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos Podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartagone, ZP002. Back with me on the show today, co-host Paul Taylor. Mr. X. Paul, welcome back, man. Happy New Year.
Hey, I appreciate it. You too. I was going to say, it's been like a year since I've been on here.
We couldn't do that awkward joke like as we recorded the last one of last year going, "Oh, see you next year." You know, but yeah, it's been a minute.
I guess we
since
could have
you've been
did
on.
that if we would have thought about it in advance, but we never know when
we
never know when we're able to do these things.
Well, I mean, you know, it's funny. I always, the people always ask, like when I'm inviting somebody on, when can you record? When I can record is whenever. It's always about when we publish. So because we have episodes kind of in the hopper here, you know, we're good. I do like to get episodes recorded every week and stack a few in between. So, you know, we're never scrambling to do a show last minute on Thursdays, which, folks, if you're not aware, we publish our show every Thursday on Spotify and Apple and wherever else you get your podcast, through the Firearms Radio Network, and the YouTube portion of the podcast gets published afterwards on YouTube. And if you have not gone over to YouTube to follow us, please head over there and do that now. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon so you get notified when we launch new videos like the podcast or like the video that I did recently about the Magpul T-Mag and why they might have just dropped the ball. But
I have to
watch now. That. Yeah.
And for those of you that are for those of you that are listening and not watching, we did not film this in the summer of 2024, even though I'm wearing this sweet Hawaiian ZERT Death Blossom t-shirt. It is winter.
Yeah,
I am trying to get in the right frame of mind here. And I don't know when you're going to publish this, but we got a pretty good snowstorm here on the East Coast. I'm trying to get in the right mentality to to go and shovel this driveway and deal with this. So I'm not doing it in this shirt, even though I should be.
Wear a turtleneck under it. You'll fit right in. We are recording this on a very famous day. It'll a day that will live with us for probably forever because the left won't let us forget it. January 6th, 2025. Wow. So this is the first show being recorded in the new year, January 6th, 2025, January 6th, 2020. January 6th, 2021 was obviously a day that will live on forever because they won't let it go, even though they should. That being said,
I thought you were saying this because today was the anniversary of the 1 year anniversary of a class that I did last year, that it was snowing, it was a blizzard, and it was new, but we had an absolute blast. Y'all make sure you're training in these environments and in the snow and in every situation you can get into, unless it's like there's a typhoon rolling through. But hey, man, if you have the opportunity to train in that stuff too.
Yeah, or a tornado, but we deal with that as well.
I guess that depends on where you're located.
Exactly. And you are, so, you know, when you and I talked before we got on here today, you're like, I don't think it's going to come northeast, and we have snow happening out here. So I don't know if it's just maybe some outer bands or some outer, you know, outskirts of what you're dealing with there, but it looks like we are going to be getting some snow today, which is exciting. I know that the Midwest has been hit, I think, overnight, some pretty severe weather out there. Obviously, if you are in the Midwest, we hope that you've listened to enough of these shows or have done enough of your own research to understand what it means to be prepared in situations like that, in your vehicle, whether it's some kind of go bag, water, blankets, clothing, something to stay warm if you should get stranded out there. I remember that whole situation that happened a couple of years ago. We've talked about it on the show where there was a giant pileup and people were stranded and people died because they were ill prepared. We're really in this coming year, we're about to, let me see if I can pull this up here, but we're about to wrap up. I think last week's episode was 96. So there's 3 more episodes. So we're closing in on 100 episodes. And, part of me wanted to actually hit 100 with the first episode of the year, but we're not there yet. So we're still a few episodes away. But when we do hit episode 100, we will start season 3. I want to focus this year on a lot of more survivalist and preparedness stuff, and what that means, all encompassing. I know that we're going to talk about a couple of things that have happened since the new year has been rung in, and a prepared individual and a prepared mindset is going to really play a big part in what we're talking about here. But Paul, you and I were talking about the movie Homestead, and we do have a show coming out that is going to kind of talk about that movie and then roll into what I learned from that show. And maybe by the time that we are ready to record that, you see that movie and we can have a 3-panel show again. That being said, you and I have talked a few times since the new year, and it's been a lot about the situations that have happened since the new year. I mean, I don't know about you, dude, but I woke up on New Year's Eve and I had a quiet New Year's Eve, just stayed in, relaxed, I'm over this holiday, right? But waking up to the digital box here, the little Google box that we carry with us, and seeing that we had a terrorist attack in the form of a person in New Orleans using a vehicle to commit a lot of murder. I don't know. I think when we talked last, you said that the death toll had gone up. Has that gone up since you last knew about it, or is it still around 16? Did you say?
Oh, the last thing, and I can't confirm this or not. The last thing I saw first, I think it started at 10, then 15, then I think I saw 16. And who knows what it's going to be by the time this airs. I know there's quite a few people that were wounded. I want to say the numbers were 30 people that were wounded, and of course, you know that if people are in critical condition and so on, there are chances, and unfortunately, right. you can't save everybody, but. And it might be wrong. It might be somewhere between that, but I think the last thing I saw was 16. But by the time this comes out, who knows?
Who knows? It may be more. And then shortly after that, later in the same day, we had another individual with a vehicle IED, I guess, if you will, a vehicle-borne IED, pull up in front of the Trump Hotel in a Tesla, and it blew up. And there have been quite a few other things that I've seen. Like when I started to look, and then obviously I see one, and then I'm scrolling through social media, and then it's just one thing after the other. There was 2 shootings in New York City, which I'm still baffled by this, because I don't know if these guys know, but New York City is a gun-free zone. Like, they're not supposed to have them. So I think the criminals need to, maybe they just didn't see the signs or something, because I'm sure if they saw those signs, they wouldn't bring them in there. They've got to obey the law.
Oh, well, unfortunately, that's just one more law they're breaking. Jeez, they're probably going to get another slap in the wrist for that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a price they're going to have to pay, considering
and then
breaking another law, which is horrible.
Horrible. So then the other thing, there was obviously some subway shit happening there, where caught on video, guys being pushed into the path of oncoming subway trains. Another lady was lit on fire there. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's just New York City right now, as the way that it is, because it's just a shithole, or if it's just people ringing in the new year the wrong way. And so those have been the stories that have been pretty much taking up the news feeds as of late, right? I mean, that's what you've seen.
Honestly, I have not even seen everything that you're talking about. I had I did see a brief article about the woman being lit on fire. I had no idea. I don't have cable, or I don't have TV. So most of the stuff that I pull is just, whenever I get on Facebook and do my scrolling, in the morning and a couple times a day, unfortunately, I need to get off of it. I think we all do. But you see what people are posting, and the whole thing about Las Vegas, of course, I see that. And then unfortunately, I'm a member of certain Facebook pages online, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows that individual was a special forces. He was a Green Beret. So our pages started lighting up.
Right.
Who is this guy? Does anybody know this guy? Can this be verified? And then, I think we all know if we just wait an hour or a day or a week, certain things come to light. Sometimes there's more questions to be asked.
Right. And so let's just put that statement out right there. When you and I spoke on Saturday, and then obviously I've talked to Jamie about this because we were going to do a show about this. And initially we were going to jump on it because it seems to be what everybody is reporting on right now. And as you guys are all aware, we like to put out information as well for our network and our members and for people to gain access to and learn about. But we stopped. We did stop because, there wasn't a lot out there. Going back to the first day that it happened, the news comes on and says the two things are linked, then they're not linked. Or the two things may be linked, then they're not linked. The one in New Orleans, he didn't act alone, but then he did act alone. It wasn't an act of terrorism, then it was an act of terrorism. The problem with all of these things that we have seen over the course of time is everybody rushes out to put out the information first, but it's not the right information. It may be pieces of the right information, but it's not the total pie of correct information. Now, the question I guess we can ask is, do you think we'll ever know all of the right information? And where I would lead you back to is the attempted Trump assassination. We still don't have the entire scope of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that people have agendas out there. And unfortunately, the media does too. And because people have agendas, they're not willing to put out, I don't want to say they're not willing to put out the truth, but they're just willing to put out their versions of the truth. And we saw this a couple of years ago with I don't know if you remember this, I think it was down in Nashville. The individual ended up shooting up the church or the school, and they had a manifesto. Yeah, it was there that the cops got it, and they never released it because that manifesto went against whatever or whoever, or they didn't want that. And the thing is, and instead of just putting out the facts, and maybe the facts are going to hurt somebody, or their feelings are going to get hurt or whatever, but the fact is sometimes the facts can help deter certain things happening in the future, and we figure out why people did what they did, and so on and so on. I think that there's going to be questions that aren't going to be answered forever, whether or not it's the JFK assassination or aliens, or there's just so much stuff out there that there's, and I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but there's just so many things that are covered up, and who does it? Who does the covering up?
Okay.
So it's the government.
Right. I want to stop you right there for a second. Because and just go back to what you said, because we all say it, right? Like, we all say that we don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. And I think that's because it gets labeled as, the crazy person, the tinfoil hat wearing guy, the one who always has that, it's not this, it's that, it's not rain, it's, it's freaking toxic chemicals pouring down on you and to kill the wheat fields. And I think there's a fine line to walk of seeking the truth versus thinking the world is just a matrix situation and all of it's fake and there's always a hidden agenda. I think it's important for people to understand that, we don't use prepper as much as we do survivalist, because for a while the prepper was deemed a whack job, for the lack of better terms, right? Like, if you're one of those. Oh, okay. Why would that, if you break that down, and this is what we talked about a little bit earlier before we jumped on, if you break that down into its most simplistic form, A prepared individual is just there to make sure his family and friends are safe through situations that are not good situations, right? Like, and then I want you to jump in, but it goes down. Everybody's a prepper. Like, you prepare for the day of weather that is about to happen. If you leave your house in the morning and it's 70 and then it's supposed to drop to 30 at 5 o'clock, you're not going out, even though you look good, in a ZERT Death Blossom party shirt with short sleeves and shorts, because you're going to prepare for the weather or later in the day. So, it just bothers me when people start going down that road of, and we all do it, of saying, oh, I'm not a conspiracy, because it's deemed at you as wrong, and it's not. It shouldn't be.
Well, I mean, I think it gets even simpler than that. Everybody's, a part of prepping is to set us up for success in case something happens. But, I don't go to the supermarket and buy one roll of toilet paper at a time. I prepare by buying multiple rolls. I don't go to the gas station and just buy gas for a trip. I don't have food in my pantry for the meals that I eat today. I'm set up for a couple of weeks, and unfortunately, everybody's, well, that's not prepping. Well, you're wrong. That is prepping. Right. Anytime that I set myself up for success or plan out my week when it comes to meals, or, I have firewood, in my back, I'm not cutting down a tree as per when I need wood. So we're prepping. It's just, I think, like you said, that word is just turned into a bad word for so many. Right. And it's because of misinformation. We all prep. We all do it. Right. Now, there's different levels of prepping, and that all depends on how much you want to be prepared. But we see with certain things happening throughout the world. A couple months ago down in North Carolina with the flooding, what a better word for prepping is, and I think it needs to be used more, is what's that? Prepping is just the fact that I have a plan. Right. I have a plan. Prepping is having a plan. Now, how in depth is your plan? That's completely up to you. Right. It's up to you. And some people, you're going to learn real quick that you don't have an effective plan, or that plan goes out the window because you didn't plan accordingly. Man, other people are set up for success. I guarantee you there's not a single person out there that is a prepper that has everything that they need for everything single situation. No. Because, something's going to happen, and it's something that you didn't plan for. You can plan for everything, but there's going to be that one case and you're like, man, I didn't expect that. But you know what the best part of a plan is Semper Gumby, being able to adjust that plan. And the more you're used to developing a plan, in the military, we have something called fragos, and a frago is on the spot. We need to make an adjustment to our plan. And we were so used to doing that, and we were training for that we didn't just go around saying, well, what am I going to do now? Guess what? You got to figure it out. But that's part of those contingencies and planning for those contingencies, and always know that it can be adjusted. And there's so many people that, man, something happens, or just, sorry to say this, they're going to fail, or they're going to want to rely on the government or everybody else. Well, sometimes the government is not who you need to rely on. I think a lot of, especially down in North Carolina, a lot of people saw that.
Yeah. I think that, and that is a theme of this Homestead movie that will come, an episode that will come out later. If you haven't already seen Homestead, please do go see it. It is definitely worth a watch. And what I took away from it is how I thought I was prepared, and I realized that I still have some gaping holes in my plan. But so we went over just obviously a little bit about what we're hearing. Now, here's the topic of today's show is basically about the things that should be concerning to people that are not being talked about or are being downplayed. And that was one of the things that you said earlier, Paul, before we started recording, was, Vegas is being downplayed a little bit, even though there is a lot of information that's come out since, but we're not going to talk about it because it's still a little bit unverified. But there was only one casualty, right? Where New Orleans is a little bit more because mass casualties, ISIS flag. we could probably do an entire episode on why the freaking media was in this person's house with a carefully set up bomb making table with a Quran on the table, but yet for some reason the FBI had not considered that a crime scene and blocked it off. Like, what's happening here? What is actually going on? And those are the things that we know so far. Well, there was a story that took place in December, mid-December, that when I brought it up to you, you hadn't heard about it, right?
No, just because it's not on. There's just so many, I think, mainstream media, and there's so many people out there. What are we drawn to when we do these? When mainstream media is just like everybody else. They're focused on death and destruction, and that's what gets the views. You always see these videos online of like the horrific accident, and it's like a train wreck. We don't want to watch it, but we do. And that's what's going to get the views and the likes. And if it doesn't, and I think that's why Las Vegas, nobody was hurt. Whether you feel it was a terrorist attack or not, nobody, one individual died. But the fact is, it's not going to get those views. It's too easily just swept under the rug because they're looking for the next catastrophe. They're looking for the next thing that's violent. People are going to look at this and like and share and follow and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of this stuff that you're talking about, I had no idea, mostly because I'm not doing the searches and, and maybe I should. I should, but I get my information from you. So it's
exactly, there you go.
You do the research.
Right. There it is. That's perfect. And so here's the thing, like, I don't search all of this stuff either. And maybe I should, but that's one of the great things about a community and a network and people that are like-minded. This information came across my feed from a buddy of mine in Florida who, it is not a ZERT member, but probably should be a ZERT member, who put this stuff out there. He put it up. And so then I start looking at it. And after one quick Google search, I was like, holy shit. And like I said, when I started it, I was like, what the hell? And then by the time I'm done, I'm like, this is absolutely insane. So folks, the story that we're talking about here happened in December, and the title, you can Google this, and obviously it's on a couple of different sites, but in December, right around December 17th, it looks like the FBI seized its largest cache of homemade explosive in its history at a Virginia home. Right off the bat, I was like, okay, what is this all about? Like, so, okay, was this another terrorist attack being planned? And that's kind of where I was looking at it. Like, how come we're not hearing about this? But they found the largest collection of finished explosive devices in the history of the Bureau at a Virginia residence house earlier in December. This is all according to court documents. The federal prosecutors are seeking to keep Brad Spafford, 36-year-old Brad Spafford, in custody after his December 17th arrest, allegedly possessing. What do you think he was arrested for? Just take a guess.
I don't know, probably having an outrageous amount of fertilizer.
No.
Who knows?
No. You know what his first and only charge has been? Possession of a short-barreled rifle that was not registered. Okay?
Probably because everything he possessed wasn't illegal.
Exactly.
But the combination of everything.
Exactly. That is really, really concerning, but also, so my first thing was, I'm like, well, wait a minute. I said, okay. So when I started to read, at first I was like, holy shit, terrorist thing. Okay, great. Then after reading this a little bit more, I was like, what is going on? So December 17th, arrest for allegedly possessing an unregistered SBR. While executing the search warrant in Spafford's newly acquired 20-acre farm, investigators found a stockpile of more than 150 homemade improvised explosive devices, IEDs, that were assessed to be pipe bombs, according to prosecutors. They said some of the pipe bombs were labeled lethal and preloaded into an apparent wearable vest. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, and I hate to say this, but as an 18 Charlie, I've gone through courses, I've gone through schools where they teach you how to make explosives using everyday stuff. And this is stuff that you guys can go out there and buy. Now, the thing is it's very well known that if you go out and buy certain things, that and a huge amount of certain things, that you would most likely think that red flags should come up. And maybe that's how they caught this individual, is he was going out buying, but certain things like fertilizer and other things that I'm not gonna mention, but you can mix this stuff together and make IEDs, improvised explosive devices, be made out of all kinds of stuff. So yeah, you would think that there would be, but how do you? I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff used by farmers.
Exactly.
They buy mass amounts of this stuff. So
right.
It's just like, who's that New York crime boss where they, killed all those people, and the only thing that they got them, that they threw them in jail, was tax evasion.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing. There's no proof. You would think the proof would be, there's suicide vests, but until there's a law out there that says suicide vests, and maybe there needs to be, but I think that might just be the initial charge in order to get them behind bars, and then I'm pretty sure there's going to be more charges.
First of all, I can't. I'm aggravated that I cannot figure out who that mobster is.
I want to say Gotti.
No, it's not Gotti. No. It was way before Gotti. It was during the days of like Prohibition. Holy crap, that's going to annoy the shit out of me until I figure it out. No, it's okay. But anyway, so the investigation, according to these court documents, the investigation for this person began in early 2023 after Spafford's neighbor told authorities that Spafford was stockpiling weapons and had lost 3 fingers in his right hand. Do you realize how severe that is right there? Like, a neighbor saw this person stockpiling weapons. Please describe or define what stockpiling weapons looks like. Like,
I'm not going to describe that because I would probably be incriminating myself, to talk about.
I mean,
it's like when the news, there's a picture that says, they pulled over somebody and they had 3 guns and 1,000 rounds in their vehicle. And I'm like, say what? Like, that's
right, exactly.
Day to the range.
That's like, yeah, exactly. That's a range day.
What does that mean? That's a 3-gun match for me.
Yeah.
Easily. But one person's, it all depends on how you're looking at it. But I mean, the fact is, and there's certain states that have red flag laws, Maryland, red flag law. You could pretty much say anything about it, and it's going to be Pennsylvania. Thank goodness doesn't, but there needs to be checks and balances out there, and who knows what this guy was going to do, but and he's innocent until proven guilty, and so on and so on. But in my opinion is, I mean, I've seen enough IED vests, and I've seen enough effects of IED vests in my lifetime that I know it probably something bad. So,
so it does get a little bit more interesting, right? So he says the same neighbor who would go shooting with him, by the way, said that he was using photos of President Biden for target practice at a local shooting range. The neighbor said Spafford believed that political assassination should be brought back and that missing children in the news have been taken by the federal government to be trained as school shooters. So, that's obviously there's some signs there, right? I mean, it's illegal to do that. You cannot threaten the president. So there's that, but he wasn't charged with that. He wasn't charged with any of these things. What crime has he committed? And he still hasn't committed a crime. Now, if he was reported to, but like you said, red flag laws, you don't need to commit a crime, which is just egregious and bullshit.
Well, I mean, like you said in the beginning, he has committed a crime. Darn it, he had a short barrel shotgun that was illegal. And if that's what they need to kind of, arrest him, then
I guess
that's what they need. But I am not gonna, I mean, I'm not gonna say I've seen stickers in urinals of certain people that I'm not going to mention their name, but their name rhymes with lame yonda. I've seen, and I got to tell you, I don't need anybody knocking on my door, but there's never been a target of any individual, real life individual been on my range for somebody to shoot at. But I know people that do it. It doesn't mean they're going to assassinate somebody. Yes, we don't like certain people, but putting a target on a range and shooting at a paper target doesn't mean that we're training to assassinate anybody. It's I don't know, man. I don't want to say I'm not condoning it whatsoever.
No,
but it's it's letting off steam.
Yeah.
And sometimes telling people they're number one on the road,
right.
using another finger is letting off steam. It doesn't mean that I want to pit you off the road.
Right.
But yeah, that's all.
So this guy has also been released on a $25,000 bond. Federal prosecutors are trying to say he poses a threat. I mean, well, what is it? Is the guy a threat or is he not a threat? I mean, if he's a threat, then what are you giving him a bond for? But they also said that he is a family man with no criminal history. Now, what is strange is this moron, this guy, he's, and this is a quote, even after losing his own fingers as a result of his homemade explosive material, he made the apparent remarkable decision to keep an extraordinarily dangerous explosive material in the home's freezer next to the food items that could be accessed by the entire family. Okay, so what is clear about this guy is he's not smart. He's just not smart. Obviously, that's a real idiot. I mean, like, what are you doing here? It was
there was a book that came out. I mean, this book is old, and you can Google it in front of you. I'm too far away from my computer. I think it's called like Uncle Tom's. I don't know. There's a book it has the information to teach you how to make homemade explosive devices. It's got all this information in there. Okay. The problem with this book is, and I've seen it. I went through government agencies like counter ID courses. And the problem with these books is it doesn't always give you the most accurate information on the amounts of certain things that you need to put in explosives. And having some type of explosive in your freezer, to me, it's not that big of a deal, because to make a charge, you need to have an initiating system and the explosive itself, and you need to connect them. Having a block, I mean, we used to take C4 and light it on fire to make our coffee. You need to have it. You need to have an initiation device, something to initiate that charge. So just having a claymore sitting around isn't going to do anything, but having a claymore sitting around with something to set it off is not the brightest idea. And anything can be used to set those things off depending on how much knowledge and ability. I have a feeling that this guy, like you said, he wasn't the smartest. He probably had one of these books. Blowing fingers, I mean, you can blow your finger off with a firecracker.
True.
I mean, and I've seen stupid people do stupid stuff. You close a firecracker in your hand and it's going to blow your whole hand apart. And it's so with him, he's probably more of a liability to himself and his family than he is to anybody else.
Right.
And, but the biggest thing that upsets me, or I'm trying to figure out, and did they question him about this stuff, is why did he have all these vests?
Well, yeah, so yes, that's it. Right. I mean, okay. You want to be prepared for and protect your 20-acre farm from, hostile forces coming in. All right. You make these booby traps, we'll just call them. But where it's a slippery slope is he committed a crime. He had a short barrel rifle, but like, is that because his buddy? So he gets on the FBI watch list, if you will, or surveillance starts because he's stockpiling weapons. Again, that's bullshit. And it's amazing that we are investigating somebody like this for 2 years, but yet this idiot in New Orleans posts 3 videos about what he's going to do, and nobody does anything to try and track down his whereabouts and stop him. But hey, this guy's stockpiling weapons, and he's got 1 SBR, and now all of a sudden, you know, he's the next target here. But did it fit the agenda? Is he? I mean, obviously he's a little right. He's way right leaning. But again, where is the crime that was committed to go from we're going to watch this guy for 2 years to we're going to raid his house for this 1 SBR, and then we know exactly where we need to go look for all this other stuff. I mean, that's a very, very slippery slope, and I do not like that at all. Like, that is your civil liberties are in question when we have problems, like when we have stuff like that happening, right? Because, you know.
Now, was there a picture? Did they post a picture that went along with this? Because how many times do you see the cops posting a picture of what they confiscated, and you look at that like, are you kidding me? Like, that's what is making this guy a criminal. Like, that amount of ammunition and his weapons cache, when, you know, I have friends that are, I mean, easily, and we're talking on a ZERT podcast, I can't imagine the gun collection. You know, right. My gun collection is sad and pathetic compared to some of my friends that have over 100 guns, but they collect them. That's part of their retirement plan. You know, right. I don't understand, me personally, these individuals that have, the more guns I have and the more calibers just means the more ammo I have to keep. I keep it right. Simple. Now, yep. I have a lot of guns compared to a lot of my friends that they're like, dude, that's nothing in comparison to some of my relatives. And don't go, FBI, this isn't for you to go, dude, they collect guns. I mean, that's what we do. They have so many different, they have a hunting gun specific for a certain animal at a certain time of year. And then they have another gun for another animal at another time. I mean, that's what they do. That's what they enjoy. We have our hobbies. Yeah. So, but I mean, I would honestly like to see a picture of what they think this IED making material in these vests. Dude, if one of my hobbies was to, I mean, like I said, I'm an 18 Charlie. Yeah. If he's on 20 acres and he's going to the corner of his property and he likes making explosives, maybe it's been covered up because it's all a misunderstanding.
I mean, maybe, but so I like, here's the deal. I just tried to get a picture and it has literally frozen up the and here we are. We're back. So it took a minute. So let me,
you're going to get a knock on your door here.
I know. I was like, oh boy, here we go. I'm trying to find the picture that I just, and whatever it's doing is it's freezing up the computer here. So I'll try and find a picture when it unfreezes here. But the picture that I'm looking at is a wooden table with ammo cans, and inside the ammo cans, they look like the size of like M40s, like, you know, like that would go in an M40 grenade launcher. Am I using the right terminology there? Is that's what that is? The 40 cal or the 40 MMs, 40 mics?
Like an M203.
Yeah, M203. Yeah.
I mean, I thought you had the technical ability to like post that picture on here.
I do, but it's literally literally freezing up the program that we're using here. So apparently I can't. So we'll have to wait for it to unfreeze, and then I'll try for a third time. But that's what they look like if I were to 40 millimeter shells or 40 millimeter munitions. It looks to be the size because it's fitting in a Plano ammo can. perfectly from side to side. So again, just a quick speculation there, but his attorneys, they argued that he should be released pending trial, telling the court that obviously he's got no criminal record, no history of substance abuse or mental illness. And there's no shred of evidence in the record that Mr. Spafford ever threatened anyone. And the contention that someone might be in danger because of their political view and comments is nonsensical. They provided that he's not a danger to anyone, but he's a hardworking family man with no criminal record. Now,
I'm going to have to go ahead and disagree with that because it appears he's a danger to himself.
Well, definitely a danger to himself. Right. Like you blew 3 fingers off, dude. Like, what are we doing
smart
here?
Enough to not do it in front of his kids and hurt them.
But. Right. So, that being said, I've got a couple of issues with this in the fact that, I don't think that there was a reason for an investigation to ever be started. Like, okay, neighbor calls up and says, hey, I think this guy is stockpiling weapons. He just brought in 2 rifles from his car. That he did that on Monday. And then 3 days later, he brought in another one. Okay. What would deem that to be a viable threat to cause an investigation to kick off? Right?
Thank goodness my neighbors are awesome because I do that every day.
Exactly. Right. You've got a range on your property,
literally out the back door, constantly back and forth with different guns, and neighbors are like, oh, there's a new gun.
Right.
So on and so on. But that's why you have awesome neighbors and you vet your neighbors,
I guess it's just, that is so very, very strange that this is where they went with that, because to me, it should have never got to the point where the FBI knocked on this guy's door or raided his house. Like, I'm sorry, there's nothing that this guy did that would have caused that. Now,
well, here's a question I have for you.
Okay.
What's wrong with somebody knocking on your door? Now, I know that's a metaphor. I'm not talking about raid, but what's wrong with somebody knocking on your door and saying, hey man, we've gotten a complaint, and you have every right to say, I don't need to talk to you. But what's wrong with the knock on the door? We live in a society where there's all these, what are they? The First Amendment regulators. And if this guy's not doing anything wrong, yep, he doesn't have to say anything. But, I can have an old bandolier, like I could have a chest thing with smoke grenades in it. And the FBI could raid my house and say that they think it's a IED vest. It's clearly not an IED vest. I go airsofting, and I keep airsoft smoke grenades in this, but you take a picture, of course it looks like I want to do, whatever. But did he break the law with his shotgun? Absolutely. The thing is what you have to remember, the law is the law. So he had one thing that he could arrest. I'm pretty sure there'll be a court appearance. A prosecuting attorney is always going to try to throw the book at you. Your attorney is going to try to defend you. I would personally like to know, are they IED vests? What was to defend your family? You're not going to go out there and make IED vests.
No, you don't.
Unless you're part of a cult somewhere.
Right.
And you can't even believe all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, you want to believe in the system. I know that there's too many situations out there, and I know completely where you're coming from. But in order for certain people to keep this country safe, and there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me here, and that is okay. In order to keep this country safe, there's certain civil rights that need to be broken.
Okay.
If you're a criminal going to do some bad things out there. Now, if this guy is a law-abiding citizen that's not doing anything wrong, then nothing should happen to them. And maybe that's why this story has been swept under the rug, because they couldn't find anything. Yeah, maybe the FBI blew this out of proportion. Then you know who I would sue if I was this guy? His neighbor.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, man, you've put all this. I had to hire a lawyer. Now I'm going to sue you, and all this stuff. But for anybody that is bad that we have found out beforehand that they're bad, and we had to kind of violate some people's civil rights to figure some stuff out. And and my whole thing is like, yeah, man, I got tons of guns, tons of ammo. Not a single gun that I own everything is legal. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Now, if I lived a half a mile south of me in Maryland, no, I wouldn't be. That's why I choose to live in Pennsylvania. Right. But as long as we're doing the right thing, you know what? At any point, anybody could. If I lived in Maryland, it's like red flag law. And you know what? The cops are going to come. They're going to confiscate stuff. I'd be stuck in a legal battle. But considering the fact that I'm a law-abiding citizen, I have no problems with the fact that as long as I'm not breaking any laws and doing everything, then I'm going to win. You know what? I'm suing everybody at that point. Just like that's the process of, you hear about all these bakers that aren't going to bake a cake, and people that, they're fired because they're political view. Do I agree with that? No. Sue them. And then they're winning, and that's what that's the checks and balances is like. I have a baby's mama. She could say anything she wanted at any point. Thank goodness she's smarter than that and common sense and everything else. But we live in a society where that neighbor was offended by something, and
dude, they went shooting.
They pay the price.
Right.
They went shooting with them.
They went shooting together. Like that's the part. It's just like,
what are you doing that to collect intelligence? To be super cop. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I just
and saying that you are right. I'm not saying that to call myself a FUD, but there needs to be checked. There are bad people out there, and in order to figure this stuff out, it's a knock on the door. Did they have a warrant? How did they even go in there to figure out that he had an illegal shotgun? And I guess they must have had a warrant. But if that's the only thing they're going to find.
Yeah, it wasn't a shotgun, by the way. It was it was an SBR, so it was a.
Oh, I thought you said short barrel shotgun. Well, same thing. Either one of them's illegal.
Well, yeah, exactly. It was something that should have been registered with the ATF according to the rules and laws that are in place today. Should it be? Should the? We won't talk about abolishing the NFA and the bullshit there, but I just If you go down the fruits of the poisonous tree road, right? Like anything that was obtained afterwards is bullshit. So obviously they did 2 years of an investigation here. I mean, I would love to know, well, when did said dude get the SBR? Was it 2 years prior? Did he have the SBR in 2023 when he was being reported as stockpiling munitions? Like if he did, then why wasn't this executed then? Why did they watch this guy for 2 years? Like that's my problem right there. Like, or almost 2 years. Like that is a real serious thing because, okay, the dude bought a couple of guns over the course of 2 years. So did millions and millions and millions of other Americans. I mean, does that mean that now every American that has bought a firearm, which by the way, they get called in, like you've got to have a NICS check, right? A background check happens. When I go buy a firearm, they know that it's registered. So, I mean, what now? Because we own multiple firearms, we got to worry about a file being opened by the FBI, and 2 years down the road, they're going to come knocking on my door saying, well, again, like there's so many questions there with that. Like, I just don't get it. Well,
to answer your question.
Yeah.
I mean, then yes, because we both bought multiple firearms. My last year, only because I rent guns now, and I like to have a large variety of guns. I mean, it's pretty much to the point where, like I said, to me, it's like, it's why we pick and choose the places where we live. And, and the people that we associate with we can't pick and choose our neighbors. I'm not saying that, even though I did see that there's apps online that you can, like, if you want to buy a house, it tells you the political affiliation of all your neighbors, which is
really
crazy. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I saw something on the news the other day. And if you're that type of person, then you don't move away anyways.
Right.
But it's one of those things where that's exactly, in certain states, I teach Maryland wear and carry, and there's so many different, you can only buy, one handgun a month, and you can only do this, and you can only do that. Man, Pennsylvania, I can do whatever. I can't say I can do whatever I want, but man, if the FBI chooses certain things, I will probably look like, to certain people out there. There are people out there that look at me as an extreme version of a gun owner. And you know what? You can have your opinion. That's okay.
Right.
I don't care about you. I care about, in the very beginning, you talked about protecting your family and, your community and, teaching, having that legacy and, and being a contributing member of society. And the thing that I can contribute is teaching people how to protect themselves and their families and their loved ones. Now, does that mean that, and I'm not going out buying the ammo the day before a class. I don't buy a box of ammo at a time. Every time I buy ammo, it's 1,000 rounds at a time, because it's usually cheaper if you buy it by bulk.
Right.
Man, I got ammo.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to some people it might look like I'm stockpiling, which to me it's normal.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the part of it that I'm really having a hard time accepting. The guy and now again, we can only speculate, right? I've got no idea what caused this investigation to escalate to the point of the knock on the door. And going back to answer your question, no, I don't think it's an issue to knock on the door, right? I mean, that's the information piece of it. I guess how it's handled after that is the real question. So, we don't know what happened from the course of 2023 until December 2024 that made the FBI go and raid this guy's farm and then arrest him and seize him. But what I do find interesting in the article that I pulled up was 5 days ago. So as of 5 days ago, his first and only charge is the illegal possession of the NFA item. Will there be more charges? Probably. I'm sure that they're going to figure out how to charge the guy, but I just don't see what he can be charged with. I mean, he made explosive devices. Okay. Is that illegal?
What's the funny thing is a lot of stuff that you buy. What's the everyday thing that you can buy? Not the everyday, but what's the thing that most states, it's not illegal. You can go down to the local gun store right now and buy it and it blows up.
Tannerite.
Right. A lot of the stuff that you use, I mean, tannerite is the same stuff. And you buy enough of that and you put it in a big enough container, man, I don't want to be anywhere close to that when it blows. Thing is, you can add stuff to tannerite. Bigger and more spectacular, and we, it's just crazy that the stuff that you can do out there, but there's nothing regulating. Man, you can go to every gun shop in the area and buy tannerite.
Right.
Look at the spectacular explosion. And the thing is this guy's got a First Amendment right. He doesn't have to say a darn thing to anybody. I would like to know, to me, now, I'm not even sure at this point if they were, just because somebody says he was making IED vests, who knows what it was. He could have just been making, we used to daisy change charges together, to clear, he could have these they said he bought 20 acres.
Right.
I mean, he could be using this stuff and it could look like an IED vest to daisy chain around trees to basically clear an area, to build a shed or to build a house. You never know any of this stuff. And the fact that the only charge, I don't know. I think I know one thing, that if this was me, I would be, I'd probably be suing people. His neighbor, for one. His neighbor's never come to the range again. That's for sure.
Well, there's going to be no Christmas pie going to that dude.
That's right.
You're right. Like, I really hope that this somehow gains a little bit of national coverage, especially if it ends up going down that way. Because, like you said, where is the intent? What am I being persecuted for? Okay, yeah, I got an NFA item, whatever the case may be, that he's going to have to answer for, whether you accept that, believe that or not, right? Personally, he shouldn't have to. Personally, the NFA should be repealed. You shouldn't need a tax stamp for any of that bullshit. But unfortunately, the law is in place right now. You decide to circumvent that, you're going to have to pay the consequences for that. But anything outside of that, sorry, it's a non-starter. Go away. I didn't do anything wrong. I can have this stuff. Like you said, I'm using this to clear off my land, which is my land. I can do whatever I want on my land. We'll see. I really hope this gets a little bit more traction. And, I'd like to probably say that we'll revisit some of this. There's something else, obviously, another thing that was in the news that we didn't really talk about today, but this is some stuff that you guys can go out and do your own research on. Look this stuff up and see what's being said about it or what's not being said about it. But Greenville, South Carolina, IEDs reported in an 18-wheeler. Boise, Idaho, bomb threat reported with IEDs found on a VIA train. Those things are out there. They're Googleable. That's a word. Look it up. Or it's not really a word. I made it up. But those things are out there and you can check on those. And I think it's important to check on those.
Yeah,
form your own opinion,
Well, to me, it's not just about your opinion. It's not about forming an opinion. It's the fact that we're going to tie this I'm going to tie this into what we were talking about in the beginning. So many people think to themselves, and I just, once every couple months, and I watch certain movies over and over again just to keep in a certain mental mindset. And we think that even though something isn't happening in our area, it's like, well, that doesn't affect me. And just because something that doesn't affect you now doesn't mean that something isn't going to affect you later. It's like, well, if, this flood's happening down in North Carolina and South Carolina with all the flooding, it doesn't affect me. Well, certain things eventually is going to affect you. Right. And you can't just keep turning a blind eye to stuff just because it's not in your AO or it doesn't involve you. For over 10 years, there's a war going on and people, they forgot about it because it didn't affect them. And, right. The other day I watched The Sound of Freedom again. And people forget that one of the main problems in this country is the fact that these children are being taken and sold into, becoming, whether it's a sex slave or anything else, but people tend to forget about it because it doesn't affect them. And it's important to pay attention to the news and all this stuff because it doesn't affect you until it does. Right. And none of this stuff, mass shooters and all these crazy people, it doesn't affect you until you're on the streets of New Orleans and here comes a truck and they might not get you, but they might get your friend. And what are you going to do at this point? And as a prepper, and a lot of people hate that word, and one of these days, something's going to affect you and you're going to sit around and you're going to wonder what's happening and not do anything about it, or you can be proactive, and you can be proactive in 3 different ways. And it's funny. I told you before this, I got my old Ranger handbook out,
Yep.
and it's in a drawer right beside me. And the cool thing about this Ranger handbook, it just doesn't talk about actions on the objective. What are you going to be in case something happens? In case something happens, yeah, we have a gun and we're gonna defend ourselves. But it's not just about in the heat of the moment. It's about setting yourself up for success during the before, the during, and the after. And I look at, man, there might not be a case where you could avoid, I'm not saying stay in your home and don't go out and don't do anything to avoid the situation in New Orleans. But if something like that happens, what did you do to prepare for the after? How many people that day would you be in a state that you could stick around and you could help save lives? Do you have that medical training? You're not going to have a med bag on your back, but you have the skills to be able to sit there and help individuals that were bleeding out or were on the verge of dying. Or did you just, so many people you look at the videos of the streets afterwards and the pictures, so many people that were just, now I'm not saying if you have family members and you have friends, yes, get them out of Dodge. That's your number one priority.
Right.
But if you have the means and the know-how to sit there and maybe help save a life, you do that. And that might just be hands on somebody, grabbing your belt. And is a belt the best tourniquet? No, but it's something.
Right.
It's something that you can use. And there's so many people that, when you think about the planning aspect, man, you should be planning for, how am I setting up myself and my family up for success before something happens, prepping, the during, and the after. And that's something that we should take seriously because, man, we are not going to go through life without the possibility of, man, everything's rainbows, flowers, and sunshine. Something is going to happen and we need to be prepared for it. Just like I need to be prepared for that knock on the door. Just in case a neighbor calls somebody. Well, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? I need to be prepared that it is my right to say nothing. No, you're not coming in this house. And if you do, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I need to be prepared. You are innocent until proven guilty. You have the right to remain silent. Well, be silent. Doesn't mean I'm a criminal. It's my freaking right. So there's so many different aspects that we need to be prepared in, and and that's part of that's knowing the law. And knowing the law is, man, I should probably not have illegal stuff in my house. What is illegal? What's not? So on and so on. And we could probably do a whole other podcast on this, but I think that's what the whole gist is getting to is knowing your rights. But at the same time, you don't take anything for granted. I don't know, man, you're kind of on the fences. Man, if this guy was a criminal and I'm glad they went up, but guess what? They didn't find anything. Everything he had was legal except for a SBR. So on and so on. So I don't know, man. It could go both ways.
Yeah.
But we need to be subjective when it comes to this stuff. And I think the problem is most of the time the news isn't, or it's one side or the other. Well, I don't know, man. I'd like to have a conversation with this guy. It doesn't mean it's going to. I think this guy should just shut up, hire a lawyer, and then sue the hell out of everybody. And that's probably what I would do.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point that you make there. I do feel like there is going to be a little bit more that comes out from all of this, or at least I hope there is, because at its 30,000 foot view, which is all we see right now, what we're hearing from the internet is to me, he didn't really commit the crime that warrants the headline. Okay, that's what they found. Great. So what? What did he do anything with it? No. Did you find some kind of elaborate, paper with all of these drawn out plans on what he's going to do? No, you didn't find any of that. You found.
And how many times out there does the media kind of portray something that isn't always the facts with the headline? You can have the same story about Trump. It's the same thing. And then the left and the right have two different headlines for it. And usually the truth is somewhere in the middle, and it's just crazy that we live in a society that it's all about what's going to get the most likes or the most views or the most traction.
Right.
How about just telling the truth?
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to see that from the mainstream media. Obviously, we talk about this. We've been talking about this, not just we as in us here at ZERT, but everybody out there is talking about what mainstream media wants to show you, will not show you, wants you to believe, doesn't want you to believe. I don't think that's going to change. So it's very, very important that you do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Anything that we talk about on this show, any of the stuff that we put out in the videos is all to lead you guys to do your own research and come up with your own ideas and formulate those and have those conversations with the other people that you are surrounded by, and just be in the know, because like we just said, we don't think you're going to get the exact story from mainstream media. Mainstream media would have you think that this was a foiled terrorist attack, but in reality, I don't know that's what it is. I can't sit there and say this guy is a terrorist and a criminal and he was going to kill thousands of people. The evidence doesn't lead you to believe that. And hopefully, like you said, Paul, the guy hires a really good attorney, the story comes out, and we get to the bottom of it, and then this guy sues the FBI, the neighbor, whoever else, like sue them all.
But I think the only way the truth is going to come out is if this guy ends up getting on the Joe Rogan podcast or this podcast.
Yeah.
Right here. Yes. Basically, going out there, it's like, hey man, this is my story. And the unfortunate thing is everything that you hear on the Joe Rogan podcast isn't true. We're dealing with something right now that, a book came out a couple of years ago, and find out that everything in that book has been completely fabricated. And we talk about that another day. I think we've talked about it in the past.
We have.
But everything on this podcast, at least, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So.
Exactly.
Or our opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. So, folks, as we wrap this thing up here, I didn't even start it by saying thank you, but I will end it by saying thank you for spending some of your time with us today to kind of talk about this and to listen to us talk about it. I'm sorry that I was not able to get the image up due to this technical difficulties, which we are still dealing with right now. So I don't know how this show is going to end. So we'll see what happens. Paul, I did send you a text and let you know that you're just going to have to leave the studio when I sign off. We're not going to do the outro here because technology, folks, it has seemed to rear its ugly head with our podcast today. But
I'm not waiting on a knock on my door. I'm going to shovel the snow off my truck. I'm getting out of here before somebody knocks on my door. And
I don't blame you, but
all my guns.
So anyway, folks, thank you for spending some time with us, and I do appreciate all of your support in the past, and hopefully we get that continued support this year in 2025. So until next time, Paul.
Yeah, the only thing I got in closing, man, if you're a neighbor, man, sometimes it just pays to mind your own business, especially if a guy's, and do your due diligence. I mean, if there's a crook,
right,
living beside me that's is a drug dealer and this and that, I got it. But until all the information and just, I don't know, this guy just seems like a crappy neighbor. And it's saying that be very aware of your neighbors and who you're bringing into your house. And I mean, I'm a firm believer that, I got a range in my backyard. I teach firearms classes. One thing I am not doing is I don't have illegal stuff showing people machine guns in my backyard and SBRs that are illegal and this and that, just because I'm a law-abiding citizen, number one. But number two, man, we live in a world that it's all about checks and balances, and be very aware of the people that you are bringing into your life, because next thing you know, you might have a knock on your door and you're answering questions that you honestly don't have to answer. So in saying that, man, this all falls down to preparing, having a plan and this and that, no matter what situation that you're in. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that because that's what it's all about.
All right. Okay, folks. Well, until next time, you guys stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you soon. ZP002 out.
XP 0311 Delta out.
All right. Take care, guys.